Are we in the wrong country? The question didn't come from confusion alone. It came from something deeper, something cracking quietly beneath years of certainty. Louisiana, summer of 1945. The air pressed down like a weight you could feel on your shoulders, thick with humidity, carrying the distant hum of insects and the faint scent of wet earth. The train slowed to a halt with a long metallic sigh, wheels grinding against the track as if reluctant to arrive. Inside the wooden cars, the women stood shoulder to shoulder, unmoving. No one spoke. They had learned that silence was safer. Anna Weiss kept her eyes fixed on the narrow strip of light cutting through the slats. It flickered as the train rocked, painting brief lines across her face. She counted her breaths without thinking. 1, 2, 3. This was how she stayed steady. This was how she stayed in control. They had been told what would happen when the doors opened. Rough hands. Shouting. Orders barked in a language they did not understand. They had been prepared for chaos. For humiliation. For the loss of whatever dignity they had left. The train stopped completely. The silence deepened. No footsteps. No shouting. Just the distant sound of wind moving through something wide and open. Then metal shifted. A latch released. The door slid open with a sharp, echoing scrape. Sunlight flooded in, too bright, too sudden. No one moved. Not a single step. The women stood frozen in place, eyes adjusting, bodies locked between expectation and reality. A figure appeared outside the door. An American soldier. Uniform neat despite the heat, posture relaxed but alert. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture sharply. He simply stood there, waiting. The seconds stretched. Long enough to feel unnatural. Long enough to feel wrong. Then he spoke. Bit, steigen Sie langsam aus. The words were soft. Clear. Undeniably German. For a moment, no one reacted. It didn't register. It couldn't. Anna felt her breath stop halfway in her chest. Around her, heads shifted slightly, eyes flickering from one face to another. Did you hear that? No one asked it out loud. They didn't need to. The question moved silently between them. The soldier remained still. He didn't repeat himself immediately. He gave them time, as if he understood something none of them could explain. Then, again, just as calm, just as precise. Bit. One at a time. German first. Then English. The two languages sat side by side in the air, equal, balanced. Anna swallowed. Her throat felt dry despite the heavy air. This wasn't how it was supposed to begin. Not like this. Not with understanding. Not with patience. A woman near the door shifted her weight. Just slightly. The movement was small, almost invisible, but it changed something. The stillness broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough. Anna watched as the woman took one careful step forward. No one stopped her. No one shouted. The soldier stepped back half a pace, giving space, not taking control. The woman reached the edge of the train car and hesitated. Then she stepped down. Nothing happened. No hands grabbed her. No voice corrected her. Just ground beneath her feet. Real ground. The kind you could trust to hold you. Anna felt it then. Not relief. Not yet. Something quieter. Something more dangerous. Doubt. The kind that didn't shout, didn't demand attention, but stayed. Persistent. Unanswered. She looked toward the door, toward the soldier who had not raised his voice, who had not forced them forward. And for the first time since the train had stopped, she allowed herself to think it. Maybe, everything they had been told was incomplete. The line began to move, slowly, unevenly, like something learning how to walk again after a long time standing still. One step, then another. Boots touched the ground with care, as if expecting it to give way. Anna stayed where she was, her hands still at her sides, fingers slightly curled from habit rather than tension. She watched each woman ahead of her descend, watched the way their shoulders remained tight even after nothing happened. No correction. No punishment. Just space. The soldier remained near the door, not directing, not counting, simply present. His eyes moved from one face to another, not searching for weakness, not measuring obedience, but observing. That difference was subtle. Easy to miss. But Anna felt it. When her turn came, she did not realize it at first. The space in front of her had opened. The line had shifted. Someone behind her breathed out, a quiet reminder. She stepped forward. The wood beneath her boots creaked softly. The doorway seemed narrower than before, framed by light that felt almost too bright to cross. She paused just inside it. The air outside was heavier, warmer, carrying the scent of grass and something sweet she could not name. The soldier stepped back again, giving her room. Not a command. An invitation. She lowered herself carefully, one foot finding the metal step, then the next. The distance was not far, less than 2 feet, but it felt longer. Her boots touched the ground. Solid. Dry. Real. She straightened slowly, her body adjusting to the open space around her. It felt wrong at first. Too wide. Too unguarded. She expected to be told where to stand, how to hold herself, where to look. Nothing came. The women gathered loosely a few feet from the train, forming no clear line, no strict formation, just a quiet cluster of gray uniforms under the southern sun. Anna kept her eyes forward, but her attention shifted. She listened. Not for orders, but for patterns. English moved through the air in calm exchanges between soldiers. Measured. Routine. Then German again, from the same voice. The soldier had stepped closer to another group, speaking with the same steady tone, repeating instructions without raising his volume. Each word placed carefully, as if accuracy mattered more than authority. Anna turned slightly, just enough to see him more clearly. He was not older than 30, perhaps a few years more. His uniform was clean, sleeves rolled just enough to match the heat, a watch resting against his wrist catching brief flashes of sunlight. There was no sign of strain in his posture. No sign of performance. He spoke German the way someone speaks a language they respect, not imitate. The sounds were not forced. They settled naturally. A woman beside Anna finally spoke, her voice low, almost lost in the air. He speaks better than my brother. It was not admiration. It was confusion. Anna did not respond. She watched as the soldier paused mid-sentence, listening now as one of the women attempted to answer him in broken English. He did not interrupt. He waited. Then, gently, he switched back to German, not correcting her, just meeting her where she was. The exchange lasted only seconds, but it shifted something again. Not in the group. In her. Language had always been a boundary. A line that separated one side from another. Orders from obedience. Enemy from self. Now it felt different. Thinner. Less certain. Anna became aware of her own voice before she used it. A quiet question forming, not planned, not rehearsed. She stepped half a pace forward, just enough to be heard without drawing attention. Warum sprechen Sie so? Her German was clear, steady, untouched by hesitation. The soldier looked at her. Not sharply. Not with surprise. Just recognition that someone had chosen to speak. He held her gaze for a moment, then answered without delay. Because it is easier to understand each other this way. No emphasis. No explanation beyond that. Just a simple truth placed between them. Anna felt the weight of it settle, not heavily, but firmly. Around her, the air remained the same. The heat, the light, the quiet movement of soldiers and prisoners adjusting to a shared space. Nothing had changed. And yet, something had already begun to shift. They were guided across the open ground without urgency, just a quiet motion that suggested direction rather than control. A gravel path stretched ahead, pale under the sunlight, leading toward a cluster of low wooden buildings set about 50 yards away. The women moved together, not in formation, but close enough to feel the presence of one another. Anna walked near the center, her pace measured, her steps even. She kept her gaze forward, but her awareness expanded outward, collecting details without appearing to look. The sky felt too large. It opened above them without interruption, a wide blue that carried no sound of engines, no distant echo of conflict, just stillness. It felt unfamiliar. Dangerous in a different way. She listened again. Boots on gravel. Soft, steady. No rushing. No correction. A truck engine idling somewhere in the distance. A door. Closing. And then voices, calm, routine, moving between English and German without tension. The same soldier walked a few paces to their right now, not ahead, not behind. Level. That detail stayed with her. Level suggested something she had not expected to find. A wooden sign stood near the path, its lettering simple, painted in white. She did not read it fully, only caught the shape of the words before her attention shifted again. A habit formed from months of uncertainty. Do not linger. Do not draw notice. But no one reacted to where she looked. No one monitored her eyes. That absence felt louder than any command. As they approached the buildings, the air changed slightly. The scent of grass gave way to something warmer. Cooked food. Bread, perhaps. Or something close to it. It reached them in faint waves, carried by the same heavy air that pressed against their skin. The reaction was immediate, though silent. Shoulders tightened. Not from fear. From memory. Hunger did not announce itself with noise. It settled in the body, steady and constant. Anna did not turn her head, but she noticed the shift in the woman beside her. A small inhale. A pause that lasted half a second longer than normal. They were led toward a wide doorway, its frame open, no barrier, no guard blocking the entrance. Inside, shadows moved across long wooden tables. The space was simple. Clean. Ordered without strictness. The soldier slowed his pace and then stopped just before the threshold. He turned slightly, addressing them again, his voice carrying just enough to reach the group. He spoke in German first, then English, the same pattern, the same calm tone. He explained where they were. What would happen next? No raised voice. No urgency. Just information, placed clearly in front of them. Anna listened to the structure of his sentences as much as the meaning. There was no edge. No effort to dominate the moment. It felt closer to instruction than command. That difference mattered. It changed how the words landed. A few women exchanged glances, quick and uncertain. The question passed again between them without sound. Is this real? Anna stepped forward when the group shifted, crossing the threshold into the building. The light softened inside, filtered through screened windows that let in air but kept out the brightness. The tables were already set. Plates. Cups. Metal utensils placed neatly beside each one. Nothing extravagant. Nothing excessive. But complete. She stopped for a fraction of a second, her eyes taking in the arrangement before she moved again. It was not what she had prepared herself for. Not even close. Behind her, footsteps continued, the rest of the group entering one by one, their movements careful, restrained, as if unsure whether the space would remain as it appeared. Anna chose a place along the table, not at the end, not at the center. Somewhere in between. She rested her hands lightly against the edge of the wood, feeling its surface, solid and worn, something that had been used many times before. Normal use. That detail settled deeper than the others. Outside, the soldier remained near the doorway, speaking quietly with another guard. His posture unchanged. His presence steady. Not watching them. Not ignoring them. Just there. Anna lowered her gaze briefly, focusing on the plate in front of her. White. Clean. Empty for now. She felt the question rise again, stronger this time, no longer quiet, no longer distant. Not fear. Not yet trust. Something in between. Something forming. If this was not what they had been told, then what else was different? The room did not fill with noise. It filled with hesitation. Chairs scraped softly against the wooden floor as the women sat down, one after another, movements controlled, almost rehearsed. No one reached for anything. No one spoke above a whisper. The stillness settled over the tables like a second layer of air, heavier than the heat outside. Anna remained upright, her hands resting near the edge of the table, not touching the plate, not touching the cup. She listened. A door opened somewhere behind her. Footsteps followed. Measured. Unhurried. She did not turn immediately, but her attention shifted, tracking the sound as it moved closer. Then came the faint clink of metal against porcelain. Plates being set down. One at a time. The pattern repeated along the table, steady. Predictable. Anna turned her head slightly, just enough to see without drawing attention. 2 American soldiers moved between the rows, carrying trays. Their movements were practiced, efficient, but not rushed. They placed food in front of each woman without comment, without inspection, as if this were routine. As if this were expected. A plate stopped in front of her. She looked down. Eggs. Light yellow, soft. A slice of bread. Butter already melting at the edges. Something darker beside it, crisp at the corners. She recognized it only after a moment. Bacon. The smell rose gently, warm and unfamiliar in its richness. It did not belong to war. It did not belong to captivity. It belonged to something else entirely. No one touched the food. Not yet. The hesitation returned, stronger this time, visible in the way hands remained still, in the way eyes moved quickly between plates and faces. Anna felt it too. Not hunger. That had been constant for too long to feel sudden. This was something different. Suspicion shaped by experience. If something appears too easily, it must be questioned. Across the table, a woman shifted slightly, leaning closer to another, her voice barely audible. War 10. Wait. The word carried weight. It was not fear alone. It was strategy. Observe first. Act later. Anna kept her gaze on the plate, studying details that should not have mattered. The way the butter softened into the bread. The way steam lifted faintly from the eggs. Real food created real signs. Nothing artificial. Nothing staged. Still, she did not move. Near the doorway, the same soldier stood again, watching the room, not with authority, but with quiet awareness. Daniel Brooks. She did not know his name yet, but she recognized his presence. He spoke to another guard briefly, then stepped inside, his boots soft against the floor. The room did not react to him the way it would have before. No stiffening. No immediate silence. The silence was already there. He walked along the side of the room, stopping near the first table. He looked at the plates, then at the women, reading the hesitation without asking about it. Then, without announcement, he reached down, picked up a piece of bread from an untouched plate, and took a bite. Simple. Unremarkable. He chewed slowly, calmly, as if he had done this 100 times before. He swallowed. Then he nodded once, almost to himself, and set the bread back down. No explanation followed. No reassurance offered. Just an action. The room shifted. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But something loosened. A woman at the far end reached for her fork. The sound of metal against the plate was small, but it carried. Another followed. Then another. The pattern spread quietly, like a ripple moving through still water. Anna remained still for a moment longer. She watched the movement, the gradual change, the way caution gave way not to trust, but to testing. She picked up her fork. It felt heavier than expected. She pressed it lightly into the eggs, watching the way they separated, soft, real. No trick. No delay. She brought a small piece to her mouth and paused just before tasting it. 1 second. 2. Then she ate. The flavor was immediate. Warm. Simple. Complete. Her body reacted before her mind did, recognizing something it had been denied for too long. Around her, the room filled with the quiet sounds of eating. No conversation. No laughter. Just the steady rhythm of people rediscovering something basic. Anna lowered her fork slowly after the first bite, her eyes lifting slightly, not toward anyone in particular, but outward. The question inside her changed shape. It was no longer asking if this was real. It was asking why it was real. The room settled into a rhythm that felt unfamiliar in its calm. Forks moved. Cups lifted. Breathing slowed. No one rushed. No one guarded their plate with urgency. Even hunger, when it was met without resistance, seemed to soften its edge. Anna continued eating, small bites at first, measured, deliberate. She paid attention to how her body responded, not just to the food, but to the absence of pressure around her. No one counted what she took. No one corrected how she held her fork. Across the table, a woman who had earlier whispered caution now ate steadily, her shoulders no longer raised, her posture loosening with each movement. It was not trust. Not yet. But it was no longer fear. That distinction mattered. Anna reached for the cup beside her plate. Coffee. Dark, thin steam rising just above the rim. She paused, watching it for a moment. In another place, in another time, coffee had been ordinary. Now it felt like something returned from a distant memory. She lifted it carefully, bringing it to her lips. The taste was bitter. Real. Grounded. It did not comfort her. It steadied her. That difference settled somewhere deep, where logic lived instead of instinct. Around her, quiet voices began to appear. Not conversation. Just fragments. A word exchanged. A short sentence. German, mostly. Testing the space. Testing whether speaking was allowed without consequence. No one responded to the sound of their voices with correction. No one silenced them. The room absorbed it naturally, as if it had always been meant to hold both silence and speech at the same time. Anna lowered her cup and let her eyes move again, slowly this time, not hiding the motion. She studied the structure of the room. The windows open but screened. The doors unguarded. The soldiers positioned near the edges, not watching every movement, not tracking every glance. Their presence was real, but it did not press inward. It stayed where it was. Contained. Intentional. Her attention returned to him without effort. Daniel stood near the far side now, speaking quietly with another soldier, his tone unchanged. There was no shift in him between German and English, no difference in posture, no added authority in one language over the other. He did not use German to control. He used it to remove something. A distance. Anna recognized that slowly, not through what he said, but through what he did not need to say. She set her fork down, her appetite no longer leading her actions. Something else had taken its place. A need to understand. She rose from her seat without announcing it. The movement was small, but it drew a few brief glances from the women nearest her. No one stopped her. No one questioned her. That, too, felt new. She walked toward the side of the room, not directly toward him, but close enough that her voice would carry if she chose to use it. She paused there. Standing still for a moment, allowing the distance to remain respectful, deliberate. Then she spoke, her English careful, shaped with precision. You speak both languages like they belong to you. Daniel turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze again. No surprise. Just attention. He took a second before answering, not to think of the words, but to place them correctly. They do not belong to me, he said. I just learned to listen before I speak. The sentence was simple. It did not explain everything. It did not need to. Anna felt the meaning settle in a different way than before. Not as information. As structure. Something to build on. She nodded once, a small acknowledgement, then stepped back, returning to her place without waiting for more. She did not need more. Not yet. The room continued as it had, quiet, steady, grounded in actions that did not demand interpretation. But inside her, something had shifted again. Not a collapse this time. Not a break. A reordering. The lines she had relied on, the ones that separated one side from another, no longer held their shape. And in their place, something quieter began to form. Not certainty. But possibility. The meal ended without announcement. No bell. No command. Just the natural slowing of movement as plates emptied and cups were set down. One by one, the women leaned back slightly in their chairs, not in comfort, but in recognition that there was nothing left to take. The room did not shift into urgency afterward. No one rushed them out. No one counted how long they remained seated. Time, for the first time in months, did not feel measured against them. Anna placed her hands lightly on the table, her fingers resting against the wood, feeling its texture again, grounding herself in something steady. Around her, small movements began to form. A chair pushed back. Another. The sound was soft, almost respectful, as if the room itself required a certain kind of quiet. She stood with the others, not waiting for instruction, but following a rhythm that had formed without words. Near the doorway, Daniel stepped forward again, his presence signaling transition without forcing it. He spoke once more, first in German. Then in English, explaining what would come next. Where they would go. How the process would unfold. His tone remained unchanged. No urgency. No authority pressed into the words. Just clarity. Anna listened, not for content alone, but for consistency. It was there. Every time he spoke, the same pattern. Calm. Precise. Respectful. That consistency carried more weight than anything else. It made the unfamiliar feel structured. Predictable in a way that did not threaten. The group began to move again, chairs left in place, tables untouched. No one was asked to clean. No one was corrected for leaving anything behind. The expectation of punishment for incomplete action lingered for a moment, then faded when nothing followed. They stepped back into the open air, the heat meeting them again, pressing against their skin like a reminder that this place was real, not imagined. The light felt different now. Less sharp. Or perhaps they had changed how they received it. Anna walked with the group, her pace steady, her posture no longer held by tension alone. She noticed the distance between the buildings now. Roughly 30 yards across a stretch of dry ground. Enough space to feel open, but not exposed. The layout made sense. Functional. Intentional. Nothing wasted. Nothing hidden. A barracks building stood ahead, its door open, the interior shaded. A few soldiers moved nearby, carrying supplies, speaking quietly among themselves. No one stared. No one paused to watch the group pass. That absence of attention carried its own message. You are not the center of this space. You are part of it. Anna let that settle. It shifted something subtle in how she held herself. Inside the barracks, the air cooled slightly, shaded from the direct sun. Rows of bunks lined the walls, simple frames with thin mattresses, blankets folded at the foot. Each space identical. No hierarchy. No separation. Just order. The women entered slowly, choosing places with the same quiet calculation they had used at the table. Not too close. Not too far. Balanced. Anna moved toward a bunk near the middle, placing her hand briefly on the metal frame before sitting down. It was firm. Stable. Enough. Around her, the room filled with soft sounds again. Fabric shifting. Shoes placed carefully on the floor. Low voices testing the space. Not hiding. Not yet fully open. Somewhere near the doorway, Daniel spoke again, this time shorter, fewer words, confirming what they already understood. Then he stepped back, not lingering, not watching. He left the doorway clear. Anna noticed that. The exit remained open. Not as an invitation. Not as a trap. Just as it was. Open. She sat still for a moment, her hands resting in her lap, her eyes moving once more across the room, taking in the details, the structure, the absence of force. Her thoughts did not race. They arranged themselves slowly, carefully, as if each one needed to be tested before it could stay. The world she had prepared for had not appeared. And the one in front of her did not demand anything immediate. It waited. That was new. That was unfamiliar. And somewhere within that unfamiliar space, Anna felt something she had not allowed herself in a long time. Not relief. Not trust. Something quieter. The beginning of understanding. The room did not settle into rest immediately. It hovered somewhere between motion and stillness, as if no one was certain what came after being allowed to sit without instruction. Anna remained on the edge of the bunk, her back straight, her hands resting lightly against her knees. Around her, the others adjusted in small ways. A shoe removed. A sleeve rolled. A blanket touched but not unfolded. These were not actions of comfort. They were tests. Quiet ones. Each movement measured against an expectation that had not yet revealed itself. Time passed without being announced. A few minutes. Maybe more. No one marked it. No one needed to. The absence of interruption began to define it. Outside, faint sounds carried through the open doorway. A vehicle moving slowly across gravel. Voices, distant, unhurried. The world beyond the barracks continued without urgency, without the sharp edges they had learned to anticipate. Anna lifted her gaze again, this time allowing it to rest longer on the space around her. The bunks were arranged with intention. Enough distance between each one to allow movement. But close enough to maintain presence. A balance between separation and connection. She noticed how the light entered the room, angled through the windows, creating soft lines across the floor. It shifted slowly, almost unnoticed, marking time in a way that did not demand attention. Across from her, the woman who had spoken earlier now sat with her hands folded, her posture relaxed in a way that had not been there before. Their eyes met briefly. No words passed. None were needed. Something had already been acknowledged. Anna lowered her gaze again, her thoughts forming not as questions now, but as observations. Patterns. The soldier. His language. The food. The space. Each element carried the same quality. Consistency. It was not random. It was not accidental. It was chosen. That realization settled deeper than the others. Choice implied intention. Intention implied something beyond procedure. A quiet shift moved through the room as one of the women stood, walking slowly toward the doorway. She paused there, looking out, her posture still cautious, but no longer held in place by uncertainty. She did not step beyond the threshold. She did not need to. The act of standing there, uncorrected, unchallenged, was enough. Anna watched this carefully. The boundary was present, but it was not enforced in the way she had expected. It existed without pressure. That distinction mattered. It changed how the space felt. She stood as well, not following, not leading, simply moving when the thought became clear. Her steps were quiet against the floor, her pace steady as she crossed the short distance to the window instead of the door. She rested her hand lightly against the frame, looking out through the screen. The landscape stretched outward, flat and wide, the horizon distant but visible. There were no walls in the traditional sense. No towering barriers. Just open land marked by subtle lines she could not fully see from where she stood. It felt exposed. And yet, controlled. She understood then. Control did not always require force. Sometimes it required structure. Predictable, consistent, almost invisible. Her reflection appeared faintly against the glass, layered over the view beyond. She looked at it for a moment. The uniform. The posture. The stillness. Then she looked past it again, letting the outside return to focus. Behind her, the room remained quiet, but it was no longer heavy. The silence had changed. It was not filled with waiting. It was filled with adjustment. A new rhythm forming, not imposed, but discovered. Anna let her hand fall from the window frame, turning slightly back toward the room. Her movements no longer carried the same restraint. Not because she trusted the space. But because she understood it, even if only in part. And that understanding, small as it was, began to replace something that had been constant for too long. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Something more subtle. The need to brace for what might come next. For the first time, she did not feel that need as strongly. Not gone. But quieter. And in that quiet, something else became possible. Not a conclusion. Not a belief. Just a recognition. The world in front of her was not asking her to react. It was asking her to observe. And that changed everything. The afternoon stretched quietly across the barracks, not marked by orders, but by the slow shift of light along the wooden floor. Anna remained near the window for a while longer, her attention no longer searching for signs of danger, but tracing patterns instead. Outside, a soldier walked past carrying a crate, his pace steady, his posture relaxed. He did not look toward the window. He did not need to. The world continued without reacting to her presence. That realization stayed with her longer than anything else. She turned back toward the room, taking in the subtle changes that had formed while she stood still. A few women now sat cross-legged on their bunks. One had unfolded her blanket halfway, running her hand across the fabric as if testing its texture. Another leaned back against the wall, her head tilted slightly, eyes closed but not asleep. These were not signs of comfort. They were signs of permission. Permission to exist in the space without immediate consequence. Anna walked back to her bunk, her steps quieter than before, not because she needed to be silent, but because the room itself carried a tone she did not want to disrupt. She sat down again, this time allowing her back to rest lightly against the frame. The metal was cool, grounding. She exhaled slowly, not realizing until that moment how controlled her breathing had been since the train arrived. Across from her, the same woman who had spoken earlier shifted forward slightly. Their eyes met again, this time held for a fraction longer. There was something different in it now. Not confusion. Not suspicion. Recognition. The kind that did not need explanation. The doorframe cast a long shadow across the floor as the sun lowered outside. Time passed, but it did not press against them. It moved beside them. Somewhere near the entrance, footsteps approached again. Not hurried. Not heavy. Familiar. Anna did not turn immediately, but she recognized the pattern. Daniel stepped into the doorway, his presence filling the space without changing it. He paused there, not entering fully, as if respecting the boundary he had helped create. He spoke, again in both languages, his voice carrying just enough to reach each corner of the room. He explained the next step. Assignments. Light work. Nothing immediate. Nothing forced. Just information. He did not watch their reactions. He did not wait for acknowledgement. He placed the words and allowed them to settle. Anna listened carefully, her attention fixed not on what was required, but on how it was presented. The same consistency. The same absence of pressure. It was no longer surprising. It was expected. That shift mattered more than the words themselves. After he finished, he remained for a moment, his gaze moving briefly across the room, not inspecting, not measuring, simply present. Then he stepped back again, leaving the doorway open, the light behind him softening as the sun moved lower. No one moved immediately after he left. The information did not create urgency. It created structure. A path forward that did not demand instant action. Anna felt it settle into place alongside everything else she had observed. Language. Food. Space. Time. All aligned. All consistent. She leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees, her hands loosely clasped. Her thoughts no longer circled the same questions. They moved forward, building on what had already been proven. This was not accidental. This was not temporary. It was a system built on something she had not been prepared to recognize. Not kindness in the way it had been described to her. Something quieter. More controlled. More deliberate. Respect. Not given freely. Not demanded. Simply present. She lifted her head again, her gaze steady, no longer searching for contradiction. If there was one, it had not appeared. And that absence was becoming harder to ignore. The world she had expected required resistance. The world in front of her required something else entirely. Understanding. And as the light continued to shift across the room, Anna realized that this place was not asking her to surrender. It was asking her to reconsider. Evening did not arrive with a signal. It unfolded slowly, the light fading from gold to something softer, something quieter, until the edges of the room blurred into shadow. Anna remained seated, her posture no longer held by discipline alone, but by choice. Around her, the others adjusted in similar ways, small shifts that no longer felt like tests, but like acceptance of the space as it was. No one asked what would happen next. The question had lost its urgency. Outside, the sounds of the camp continued, steady and predictable. A door closing in the distance. A voice calling out, not sharply, just enough to be heard. The low hum of a generator somewhere beyond the buildings. Each sound carried a sense of order, not imposed, but maintained. Anna listened to it the way she had listened to everything else. Carefully. Without assumption. She lay back slowly on the bunk, her hands resting at her sides, her gaze fixed on the ceiling above her. The wood was simple, unmarked, holding no story she could read. And yet, it did not feel temporary. It felt intended. That thought lingered. Intended meant planned. Planned meant this place existed before she arrived and would continue after. She closed her eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to measure the absence of tension in her body. It was not gone. It had changed. Softer. Less immediate. She opened her eyes again, turning her head slightly toward the open doorway. The sky beyond had darkened, the blue deepening into something quieter, the horizon no longer sharp. A single light had been switched on outside, casting a steady glow across the ground. Not harsh. Not blinding. Just enough to see. Just enough to move if needed. Footsteps approached once more, slower this time, less frequent. Daniel appeared again at the doorway, his silhouette outlined by the light behind him. He did not step inside. He did not speak immediately. He stood there for a moment, as if allowing the space to remain undisturbed. Then, quietly, he spoke, only in English this time, his voice low, carrying just enough. He explained the final detail. Lights out would come soon. Rest was expected. Not demanded. Expected. The difference remained consistent. Anna listened, not because she needed the instruction, but because of how it was given. The tone had not changed since the first word he spoke that morning. It had not needed to. After he finished, he gave a small nod, not directed at anyone in particular, then stepped away, his presence fading as naturally as it had arrived. The doorway remained open for another moment before someone outside reached in and pulled it gently closed. Not shut. Just closed enough to mark the end of the day. The room dimmed, the remaining light filtering softly through the windows. Anna lay still, her breathing steady, her thoughts no longer circling the same questions. They had moved past that point. What remained was quieter. Clearer. She thought about the first moment on the train. The silence. The expectation. The certainty of what would come. Then the voice. The language. The absence of force. Each piece aligned now in a way she could not ignore. It had not been a mistake. It had not been an exception. It had been the beginning of something consistent. Something structured around a principle she had not been taught to recognize. She turned onto her side, facing the center of the room, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. Around her, the others had settled as well, their forms still, their breathing slow. No one spoke. The silence had returned. But it was no longer heavy. It did not press against her. It rested beside her. Anna closed her eyes again, this time allowing them to remain closed. Not because she trusted what would happen next. But because she no longer expected it to break her understanding of the present moment. That alone was enough. The world had not changed in a single day. But her place within it had shifted, quietly, without demand, without force. And as sleep began to approach, not suddenly, but gradually, she held on to one final realization, simple and steady. He had not raised his voice. He had removed the distance.